People ask me what the scariest part of being a saturation diver is. They think it's the sharks, or the darkness, or the thought of 1,000 feet of ocean pressing down on your skull like a hydraulic press. But it's none of those. It's the sound. Behind me, the air mix is hissing. My heart is a hammer in my chest, but outside, on the other side of 4 inches of steel, something is knocking. Not a mechanical thud, a wet, rhythmic tapping, like a finger on a window pane. It's breathing. Mark, tell them to blow the seals. It's breathing the water. If you want to know what it's like to be a saturation diver, go into your bathroom, turn off the lights, and climb into a metal trash can with 3 other men you've known for 10 years. Now imagine staying there for 28 days. Imagine that if you open the door, your blood will literally boil and every cell in your body will explode. That's the pot, the hyperbaric chamber. It's our home, our prison, and our life support. My name is Miller. I've spent more time under pressure than I have on dry land. You get used to the helium voice, that high-pitched, cartoonish squeak caused by the breathing gas. You get used to the taste of metal in your mouth. You even get used to the smell of 4 men who haven't felt a breeze in a month. But you never get used to the weight. At 1,000 feet, the ocean isn't water anymore. It's a solid wall. It's an entity that wants you flat. It's constantly searching for a microscopic crack, a single weak bolt, a tiny flaw in a seal, so it can rush in and turn you into a red smear on the wall. We were stationed on the Archon, a deep-sea support vessel hovering over the Philippine Trench. The job was simple, or so the contract said, a structural integrity audit for a private energy conglomerate that didn't have a name, only a logo, a stylized eye inside a triangle. There were 4 of us in the chamber, me, the lead, Mark, my bell partner and best friend for a decade, Julian, the tech, and David, the rookie. David was the first one to notice the change in the water. "Miller," he squeaked, his voice high-pitched from the heliox mix. "Check the external hydrophones. I'm getting a reading that doesn't make sense." I leaned over the monitor. The hydrophone was picking up a low-frequency pulse. Thump, thump, thump. "It's just a tectonic shift, kid," Mark grunted from his bunk. "The trench is active. Go back to sleep." "No," David insisted. "Listen to the interval. It's exactly 60 beats per minute. That's not a tectonic shift. That's a pulse." I looked at the screen. David was right. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate. It sounded like a massive mechanical heart, but we were miles away from any known drilling site. "Maybe it's a whale," Julian suggested. "At 1,000 feet, I countered, nothing that big dives this deep, and nothing stays down this long." 2 hours later, the orders came from the gods, the control team on the surface. We were to begin the blowdown. We were heading into the bell. The transition from the chamber to the diving bell is a ritual of silence. We check each other's seals. We check the umbilicals, the umbilical cords that provide our gas, our heat, and our communication. If that cord snags, you're a dead man. If it cuts, you're a ghost. Mark and I dropped into the bell. The heavy hatch hissed shut, sealing us in. The winch groaned, and the world began to fall away. As we descended, the light from the Archon faded from blue to gray, and then to a black so thick It felt like velvet. The only thing we could see through the portholes were the sea snow, organic debris falling from the surface, and the occasional flash of a bioluminescent fish that looked like it had been designed in a fever dream. 600 feet, the supervisor's voice crackled in our headsets. Pressure is holding, gas mix is optimal. Copy that, topside, descending to the target site. At 900 feet, the temperature outside dropped to near freezing. Our suits were heated by hot water pumped down from the surface, but you could still feel the cold clawing at the edges of the suit. And that's when the tapping started. Tink, tink, tink. It was the sound of something hard hitting the exterior of the bell. Must be some debris, Mark said, though I could see his eyes darting toward the viewport. In a dead still current? I asked. I turned on the external floodlights. The beams cut through the gloom, illuminating the silt. There was nothing there, just the vast, empty expanse of the abyss. 1,000 feet, topside announced. You are at the floor, deploying the moon pool. The bottom of the bell opened up, because the air pressure inside the bell is the same as the water pressure outside. The water doesn't rush in, it just sits there, a dark, shimmering pool at our feet. Mark stepped out first, his heavy boots sinking into the fine gray silt of the ocean floor. I followed him, my heart racing. We were standing in a place where no human was ever meant to be, a graveyard of ships, ancient bones, and secrets. Our task was to inspect a subsea node that had been dropped by the company a week before. We found it 50 yards from the bell. It was a massive chrome sphere, half buried in the mud. But it wasn't chrome anymore. It was covered with a thick, translucent film. It looked like a layer of jellyfish skin, but it was tougher. When I ran my hand over the skin, it flinched. "Miller," Mark's voice crackled. "You see this?" He pointed his light at the base of the node. The skin wasn't just on the machine, it was spreading. It was growing into the seabed, forming thick, vein-like tubes that disappeared deep into the silt. And then I saw the most impossible thing of all. Inside the translucent skin, something was moving, a gas bubble. It wasn't rising to the surface, it was being pulled inward. The node was breathing. The machine wasn't just sitting there, it was being used as an organ, an artificial lung for something buried beneath us. "Topside," I whispered, my voice trembling. "We have an anomaly at the node. It looks biological." Silence from the surface. A long, agonizing 10 seconds of static. "Topside, do you copy?" "Miller," the supervisor's voice finally came back. It sounded different, cold. "The node is functioning as intended. Proceed with the internal sensor check. Do not touch the organic matter." "Do not touch it," Mark spat. "It's crawling up my legs, topside. The silt is moving." He was right. The ground beneath our feet was beginning to heave, slowly, rhythmically, like the chest of a giant. Thump, thump, thump. The sound from the hydrophones wasn't a tectonic shift. It was the planet itself. No, not the planet. Something on the planet that had been waiting for the pressure to be just right. Mark tried to pull his boot out of the silt, but the veins had already wrapped around his ankle. They weren't just holding him, they were fusing with the fabric of his diving suit. "Miller, get me out of this!" I grabbed my diving knife and hacked at the tubes. They didn't cut like plastic or rubber. They bled. A thick bioluminescent blue fluid spread out, clouding our vision. The moment the fluid touched my visor, it began to etch into the glass, hissing like acid. "Narc, move!" I hauled him back toward the bell. We were stumbling through the dark, our lights flickering as the electrical interference from the node intensified. Behind us, the chrome sphere cracked open. It didn't explode, it unzipped, like a mouth opening for the first time in a million years. And from the darkness inside that sphere, a sound emerged that defied every law of physics. It was a sigh, a long, weary breath that vibrated through the water, through our suits, and directly into our bones. The water around us began to boil, not from heat, but from a sudden violent release of gas. Thousands of tiny bubbles surrounded us, and in the chaos, I lost sight of the bell. "Mark, where are you?" "I'm here." His voice came through the comms, but it was distorted. It sounded like he was underwater, not in a suit, actually underwater. "Miller, the air, it tastes like salt."
I turned my light toward him. Mark was standing 10 feet away. His helmet was intact, his umbilical was connected, but his visor was filled with water. He was drowning inside his own suit. But he wasn't struggling. He wasn't clawing at his throat. He was standing perfectly still, his hands at his sides. And as I watched, he reached up and did the unthinkable. He unlocked his helmet. "Mark, no! The pressure!" At 1,000 feet, the pressure should have crushed his head like a grape the instant the seal broke. It should have been an instantaneous, merciful death. But the water didn't crush him. The water entered him. It flowed into his mouth and nose, not as a liquid, but as a living thing. His chest expanded to 3 times its normal size. His skin turned that same translucent, vein-streaked gray as the node. He looked at me. His eyes were gone, replaced by 2 glowing violet orbs. "It's not dark down here, Miller," he said. The voice didn't come through the radio. It came from the water itself. "It's crowded." Then he turned and began to walk, not toward the bell. He walked deeper into the trench, into the blackness where the pressure was high enough to liquefy steel. And he was breathing. I could see the rhythmic expansion of his chest. He was a saturation diver who had finally found his true depth. I was alone, and the tapping on my own helmet had begun again. Tink, tink, tink. I didn't watch Mark walk away. I couldn't. When you're at 1,000 feet, your brain does this thing where it tries to protect you by shutting down everything but the immediate. I didn't think about his wife. I didn't think about the 10 years we'd spent drinking beers in New Orleans between contracts. I only thought about the umbilical. The cord was shaking. My lifeline was vibrating with the same rhythmic thump-thump that was coming from the seabed. "Topside, I'm alone. Mark is gone. He opened his lid. Do you hear me? Mark is gone." My voice was a frantic, high-pitched squeak in my ears, but the response from the supervisor was a wall of white noise. The radio wasn't dead. It was being overwritten. Beneath the static, I could hear 1,000 tiny clicking sounds, like a swarm of crabs skittering over a porcelain floor. Then the supervisor's voice broke through, but it wasn't the man I'd known for 3 weeks. It was flat, synthetic. "Miller, retrieve the sensor data from the node. The Archon Group requires the biological baseline. Do not return to the bell until the harvest is complete." "The harvest?" I screamed. "My partner just turned into a goddamn sea slug, and you want a sensor check? Blow the winch! pull me up."
Negative, Miller. If you enter the bell without the sensor pack, the external hatches will remain locked. You are a saturation diver. You are already pressurized. You have nowhere to go. The cold realization hit me harder than the ocean itself. The I logo, the Archon Group. They hadn't sent us down here to audit a pipe. We were the bait. We were the biological baseline to see how the human body reacted to the infection. I looked at the node. The translucent skin was pulsing faster now, a vibrant, angry violet. The veins in the silt were pulling toward me, sensing the heat from my suit. I did the only thing a man can do when he's been buried alive. I fought. I didn't go for the sensor. I turned and sprinted, as much as you can sprint in 100 pounds of gear through pressurized water, back toward the bell. The silt felt like it was grabbing my boots, the ground turning from solid earth into a hungry, viscous mud. Tink, tink, tink. The tapping on my helmet wasn't coming from the outside. It was coming from inside the visor. A tiny white shard of coral was growing out of the corner of my HUD display. It was feeding on the electrical current of my helmet's computer. I watched, paralyzed, as it branched out like frost on a window pane, its tiny barbs scraping against the glass. I reached the moon pool of the bell and howled myself up into the dry chamber. I slammed the emergency seal button. The heavy steel hatch hissed shut, cutting off the ocean. I was in the bell. I was safe, but the air in the bell didn't smell like the recycled heliox mix. It smelled like jasmine and old copper. It smelled of the deep. I slumped against the wall, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I looked down at my hands. The white frost from the helmet had jumped to my gloves. It was spreading across the rubber, turning the black material into a pale, calcified stone. "Julian! David! Are you there?" I yelled into the chamber comms. "Miller!" It was David, the rookie. He sounded like he was crying. "Miller, something's wrong with the pot. The pressure gauges are climbing, but topside isn't responding. Julian he's just staring at the wall. He won't move." "Listen to me, David. Seal the internal hatch. Don't let the air mix change. There's something in the water. It's not a virus. It's a rewrite. It's rewriting everything it touches." I started the winch from the internal controls. The motor groaned, struggling against a weight that shouldn't be there. Something was holding the bell down. I looked through the small viewport into the black water. Mark was there. He was floating outside the glass, his face pressed against the port. His skin was completely gone now, replaced by that shimmering, translucent membrane. He could see his internal organs. They were glowing violet, pulsing in time with the node on the seabed. He raised a hand that now had 6 fingers, each one ending in a needle-sharp point, and he pointed at me. Then his voice came through my headset, not through the radio. It was a direct induction into my skull. "The pressure is a gift, Miller. Stop fighting the weight. Let the water in. It's so much quieter when you stop trying to breathe." The bell lurched. The winch snapped. We weren't going up. We were being pulled down, into the trench, into the eye. The bell didn't hit the bottom. It stopped at 1,200 feet, dangling over the abyss like a bait hook. I sat in the dark for what felt like hours. In saturation diving, time loses its meaning. Your world is reduced to the hissing of valves and the red glow of emergency lights. But then, the bell started to vibrate. Not a mechanical shake, a purr. The Archon Group had finally decided to bring me in, not for rescue, for study. The winch on the Acheron began to turn, and the bell was hauled up, screaming through the water column. As the pressure changed, the integrated parts of the bell, the coral on my helmet, the frost on the walls, began to hiss and bubble. They didn't like the ascent. When the bell finally locked into the TUP on the ship, I scrambled out of the hatch and into the main chamber. "David! Julian! Are you there?" I burst into the living quarters of the pot. The scene was a nightmare. The hyperbaric chamber, which should have been a sterile, metallic environment, was transformed. The walls were sweating a thick blue oil. The bunks were covered in a layer of fine white sand that seemed to move on its own. Julian was sitting in the corner. He had stripped off his clothes. His back was to me, but I could see his spine. It wasn't bone anymore. It was a jagged ridge of violet crystal, protruding through his skin, glowing with a rhythmic intensity. Thump, thump, thump. "Julian?" I whispered. He turned around. His mouth had been replaced by a circular, pulsating vent. He didn't speak. He just exhaled a cloud of that jasmine-scented mist. "It's beautiful, Miller." David's voice came from the upper bunk. I looked up. David was still human, but only just.
He was clutching a small glass sample jar he'd taken from the lab kit. Inside the jar was a piece of the skin from the node. He was holding it against his chest like a holy relic. "The Archon Group, they told me everything," David squeaked, his voice cracking. "They didn't find this place. They built it. This isn't the Philippine Trench. This is a womb. They're cultivating a new version of humanity, one that can survive the coming phase shift." "David, put the jar down," I said, reaching for the emergency fire axe mounted on the wall. "That thing is eating you." "No," David smiled, and his teeth fell out of his gums, hitting the floor like pearls. "It's perfecting me. The pressure was the only thing keeping the old us together. Down there, in the dark, the rules change. We don't need oxygen, Miller. We need the song." Suddenly, the external speakers of the pot crackled to life. "Miller, this is Dr. Vane from Archon Research. You have witnessed the integration. You are now a primary witness. We cannot allow you to decompress. The song cannot be allowed to reach the atmospheric air yet." "You're going to kill us?" I yelled at the ceiling. "You're going to leave us in this tin can until we rot?" "Not rot, Miller." Vane's voice was chillingly calm. "We are going to increase the pressure. We are going to bring the trench to you." The pumps began to roar. The gauges on the wall started to spin. 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet. The pot began to groan. The steel was rated for 1,500 feet, maybe 2,000 in an emergency. But Archon was pushing it to the limit. They were trying to see how much pressure the infection needed to fully take over a human host. Julian stood up, his crystal spine elongated, scraping against the ceiling of the chamber. He walked toward me, his movements fluid, like a dancer underwater. "Don't look at his eyes, Miller," David screamed, though he was already changing, his skin turning translucent. "If you look at the violet, you hear the song." I grabbed the axe and swung. The blade buried itself in Julian's shoulder. There was no blood,
only a spray of blue bioluminescence and a sound like 1,000 glass flutes shattering at once. Julian didn't even flinch. He reached out and touched my visor. "Miller," he whispered, his voice a harmonic resonance that bypassed my ears and went straight to my brain. "Why are you still trying to be a man? Being a man is so heavy." He pressed his hand against the glass. The heat from his touch was incredible. I could see the molecules of the reinforced glass beginning to rearrange themselves, turning from solid matter into a soft, porous coral. He was reaching through the wall. The pressure hit 5,000 feet. The pot shouldn't have held. It should have imploded, crushing us into a ball of meat and metal the size of a grapefruit. But it didn't. The skin had reinforced the chamber. The coral was holding the steel together, creating a biological hyperbaric seal that defied the laws of physics. I was backed into the corner, the axe useless in my hands. David was gone. He was just a pile of glowing violet moss on the upper bunk, singing in a voice that sounded like distant whale calls. Julian was standing over me. He wasn't Julian anymore. He was a pillar of white stone and violet light, a masterpiece of the abyss. "Miller," the voice in my head said, "the Archon Group is watching. They want to see the end. Show them that the ocean is no longer a place, it's an inhabitant." I looked out the small porthole that looked out into the ship's hangar. I saw the scientists. They were standing behind a blast shield, holding clipboards, their faces masked. They weren't horrified. They were taking notes. One of them, Dr. Vane, I assumed, stepped forward and pressed a button on the intercom. "Miller, if you can still hear me, thank you for your service. The data you've provided will ensure the survival of our species in the centuries to come. The surface is dying, Miller. The air is becoming toxic. The sun is failing. But the deep is eternal." He turned a dial. The final blowdown began. The air in the chamber was replaced by the blue fluid from the node. It rushed in through the vents, filling the pot in seconds. I held my breath. I fought it. My lungs were burning. My vision was swimming with black spots. I looked at the axe. I could end it. I could put the blade through my own throat before the change took me. But then I saw him. Mark was outside the porthole. He wasn't in the water anymore. He was in the hangar. He was walking through the air, his translucent body shimmering under the fluorescent lights. The scientists didn't run. They knelt. They bowed their heads as he passed, like he was a god returning to his temple. Mark looked at me through the glass. He smiled. He didn't have teeth anymore, just a glowing violet void. "Miller, the water is fine. Open your mouth." My lungs gave out. My instinct to survive overrode my fear of the unknown. I took a breath. I didn't drown. The blue fluid entered my lungs, and for a second it felt like liquid fire. Every nerve in my body screamed as my DNA was unzipped and re-stitched. My bones softened. My skin became a window. My eyes became the abyss. The pain vanished. The fear vanished. The helium voice was replaced by the song, a magnificent, crushing symphony of the deep. I looked at my hands. They were beautiful. They were made of the same white stone as the ancient reefs. I turned to the porthole. I tapped on the glass. Tink, tink, tink. Dr. Vane looked at me. He smiled. He opened the outer hatch of the chamber. I stepped out into the hangar. The air felt thin. It felt weak. It felt wrong. "Welcome back, Miller." Vane's voice sounded like a tiny, distant squeak. "Are you ready to begin the second phase?" I looked at the city lights through the hangar doors. I could see the millions of people living their lives, breathing their thin, fragile air, unaware that the weight was coming for them. I felt a deep, overwhelming sense of pity for them. "Yes," I said, and the vibration of my voice shattered every window in the hangar. "Let's bring them to the trench." They think the ocean is something they can conquer with steel and fire. They think they are the masters of the blue. But the ocean isn't a place, it's a patient hunter. We are the Archon Group. We are the first of the new depth, and we are coming for the surface. If you live near the coast, if you hear a rhythmic thumping in the ground during the high tide, if you see a violet light pulsing beneath the waves, don't run. You can't outrun the pressure. Just take a breath. The water is fine.
Motherfucking design all right now.